I have a homeland, a country dear to me. It's nestled quietly there by the Baltic Sea. Its people want the same things just like people everywhere. They fight to gain their freedom and they've got to know we care. They fight to gain their freedom and we've got to know we care. I love my Latvia, forever a part of me. I know I'll never rest until that land is free. For half a century they have felt the oppressor's hand. A failing communism has raped our beloved land. And we will not forget this, and we won't fade away. Today we tell the Russians that it's freedom all the way. Today we tell the Russians that it's freedom all the way. I love my Latvia, forever a part of me. I know I'll never rest until that land is free. The move to freedom has been hard and it's been slow. What will the future bring? I think that we all know. We must all be united, and to the Russians say, the Baltic nations won't give up, they're on this earth to stay. The Baltic nations won't give up, they are on this earth to stay. I love Estonia, forever a part of me. I know I'll never rest until that land is free. I love Lithuania, forever a part of me. I know I'll never rest until that land is free. I love my Latvia, forever a part of me. I know I'll never rest until that land is free. I know I'll never rest until that land is free.
Welcome to the rally to support the independence of the Baltic republics, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia, and to protest the economic blockade of Lithuania imposed by Mikhail Gorbachev. Thank you for coming despite the weather. Let me assure you that the sun is shining brightly in Vilnius, Tallinn, and Riga. Until 1940, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia were independent, democratic republics, recognized as such by other nations, including the United States, and were members of the League of Nations. In 1940, they were forcibly annexed by the Soviet Union pursuant to a secret non-aggression pact between Hitler and Stalin. The Baltic republics never, let me repeat, never voluntarily joined the USSR and never consented to be governed by the laws and constitution of the USSR. Communism was foisted on them. The United States has never officially recognized the annexation of the Baltic republics by the Soviet Union. Through glasnost and public pressure, the Soviet Union has been forced to and has acknowledged the existence of the Hitler-Stalin Pact and the annexation and occupation has been illegal. Now, 50 years later, we are witnesses to history, and through a united effort, we can influence and shape the destiny of Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. On March 11, 1990, Lithuania declared, or more correctly, redeclared its independence. Moscow, despite its acknowledgement that the annexation was illegal, reacted to Lithuania's declaration of self-determination by imposing an economic blockade in an effort to force the brave Lithuanians back into the stranglehold of the USSR. This is a clear violation of human rights. Teguvoja laisva Lietuva! On March 30, 1990, Estonia declared its intention to be independent and has started to proceed to that end. Elago Baba Esti! I am proud and happy to announce that today, Latvia, by its duly elected parliament, declared, or redeclared its independence. Lai dzīvo brīvā Latvija! Today to celebrate the re-emergence of independent Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, and we will do that with songs and dance, notwithstanding the weather. However, we are not unmindful that a declaration of independence does not automatically bestow independence. That was not the case in 1918, and that will not be the case now. By gathering here, we want to show our brave brothers and sisters in our homelands that we in America have not forgotten them, but steadfastly and completely stand behind them and their drive to independence. We also want to send a message to President Bush and urge him to grant formal diplomatic recognition of independent Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. Mr. Bush, you can have good relations with Mr. Gorbachev and recognize the independent Baltic republics. We also want to send a message to Mr. Gorbachev to release his grasp of the Baltics and grant them the independence he has admitted was usurped 50 years ago. Mr. Gorbachev, give up your economic blockade of Lithuania. It is doomed to failure. You cannot change destiny. We will start our program with an invocation by the Reverend Vilis Vārsbergs, pastor of the Chicago Latvian Zion Evangelical Lutheran Church.
Let us pray. O God of freedom and justice, as in the days of old, you did hear the cry of your people who were in slavery in Egypt, so we pray that you would hear the cry of the Baltic people for the same freedom that you granted to your people in the days of old. Hear the cry of our people and lead them peacefully into freedom and prosperity, into justice and human rights. And we ask that as in the days of old, you did sink in the sea the horses and the chariots of the Egyptians, so you would sink in the sea the tanks and the rockets, the jet planes and the atomic bombs of the evil empire that is headquartered in Moscow. We ask that you would protect not only the Baltic people, but all the people of Eastern Europe from that kind of military demonstration and might that we see in a paper this morning that took place in Riga yesterday. Protect, we ask, all nations from a fate of San Salvador, of Guatemala, of Argentina in a few years back, where the generals and the military think that they are the ones who can dispense justice. This and all that we and our sisters and brethren, our fathers and mothers, need for their bodies and their souls in our homelands, we ask of you, in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
The Latvian Kammer Chorus can proceed to the stage, please. For the singing of the American National Anthem. Māris Graudiņš is a Latvian political activist from Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and fellow Balts, Gorbachev has unleashed the forces of Paris a true May Day distress signal, a true reflection of the Soviet public will. Calls for Gorbachev's removal and support for Lithuania resounded above the empty Marxist slogans. The public outcry forced an embarrassed Gorbachev to leave his spot on the Kremlin wall. And how ironic that at the same time as duly elected Moscow and Leningrad city officials criticized Gorbachev's program, and as the Russian people cried out for his removal, the President of the United States and his Western allies are trying to avoid stepping on Mr. Gorbachev's toes for fear of what may replace him. But the victories of radical Soviet free market reformers in Moscow and Leningrad prove that the Russian people want to join Latvians and Lithuanians and Estonians in becoming masters of their own fates. For too long, the Communist Party has ruled as a slumlord in the Baltic and in the lives of every single Soviet citizen. Latvia has reclaimed its right to determine its own future today. The time has come for Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia to rejoin the Western world. We have recently witnessed the independence of Namibia in Africa, the last third world colony, and we also witnessed rapid and full diplomatic recognition of Namibian independence, at times even prior to its declaration. Sadly, to the consternation of many Balts, this is a development lacking in the overly cautious approach taken by the West in the Baltic. Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia are the only free countries who have experienced being once again relegated to colonies in this century. The Baltic states must not remain a subjugated anachronism of history purely to satisfy a decaying empire's desire to continue autocratic rule. Ultimately, a democracy demands that we face up to the truth and to the validity of the just Baltic cause. Democracy does not take to exceptions, or ultimately it itself becomes corrupted. We are all brethren in the cause of freedom and justice, and there can be no real freedom without justice. If anyone argues that it's justifiable to suppress justice and the truth for some nebulous, quote, greater good, unquote, then the American people must be prepared to accept the consequences. We would be eroding the moral values that we seek to temporarily suspend. We would in effect place our moral stance on the level of the totalitarian regimes whose downfall we've heartily applauded in Eastern Europe. Freedom isn't a commodity sold on the Chicago Board of Trade. Freedom isn't a bargaining chip in U.S.-Soviet relations. Freedom is exactly what Thomas Jefferson and the Declaration of Independence once said it was. It's made up of the inalienable right to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. And if the government should abuse and usurp these rights, then there is a right and indeed a duty to throw off such government. The Latvian people did so in 1918, rejecting the rule of a czarist despot, and they've done so again today in saying no to 50 years of communist occupation rule. The citizens of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia are prepared to sacrifice and assure that their children will be free to speak, to travel, and to control their own destiny. No man is an island unto itself, and no state can exist in isolation. That's why it's imperative that we and our elected representatives do all we can to support the Latvian people in their newfound independence. After all they want is freedom, and we must help in making sure they get it now. God bless Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia.
Through sheer coincidence, we have a guest with us from Riga, Latvia, who is on the advisory committee of the Latvian Popular Front. He only speaks Latvian, but he did want to address this crowd. So for the non-Latvian speaking people, please bear with us. Mr. Arnolds Kociņš.
Amerikas pilsoņi, Baltieši visā pasaulē.
Dear Americans, Lithuanians, Latvians, and Estonians the world over.
Trīs Baltijas valstis ir vienīgās, kuras nav varējušas de facto atjaunot savu otrajā pasaules karā zaudēto suverenitāti.
The three Baltic states are the only countries which have not been able to renew their de facto sovereignty lost during World War II.
Tāpat kā agrāk, arī tagad šo atjaunošanu kavē Padomju Savienības terors un Rietumvalstu divkosīgā politika Baltijas jautājumā.
As before, its renewal is still hindered by the Soviet terror and the two-faced policies of Western nations concerning the Baltic question.
Tā bija Amerika, no kurienes pirms vairāk kā 70 gadiem nāca tautu pašnoteikšanās princips.
It was the United States from which more than 70 years ago came the principle of self-determination.
Bet šodien ASV prezidents paziņo, ka neiejauksies Lietuvas un Padomju Savienības attiecībās.
Today, the President of the United States announces that he will not interfere between Lithuania and the Soviet Union.
Vai mēs iedomājamies, kas būtu noticis, ja ASV savā laikā nebūtu iejaukušās Padomju Savienības un Afganistānas attiecībās vai Padomju Savienības un Rietumberlīnas attiecībās?
We can only imagine what would have taken place if the United States had not interfered with the relationship of the Soviet Union and Afghanistan, or the Soviet Union and West Berlin.
Amerikas Savienotās valstis gatavojas piešķirt Padomju Savienībai augstākās labvēlības status tirdzniecībā tādā brīdī, kad Padomju Savienība realizē pret Baltijas tirdzniecības sakaru bloķēšanu, vai tā nav prēmija agresoram?
The United States is preparing to grant a favored nation's trade status at the same moment when the Soviet Union has put into effect a trade blockade against the Baltic states. Is that not a prize for the aggressor?
Pēc atbruņošanās alkst visi, bet atbruņošanās dēļ nedrīkst upurēt tautu tiesības.
But for the cause of disarmament, one must not sacrifice the rights of nations.
Uzmanieties, lai Gorbačovs nepadara atbruņošanās jautājumu par šantāžas līdzekli.
Beware that Gorbachev does not turn the question of disarmament into sham.
Ja atbruņošanās dēļ tiek upurēta Baltijas tautu brīvība, tad sagaidiet drīz nākamo upuri uz šī paša altāra.
If the freedom of the Baltic peoples is sacrificed to the cause of disarmament, then you can soon expect another offering on the same altar.
Man rodas iespējas, ka rietumi pat labam pārdzīvo medus mēnesi ar Gorbačovu. Turpretī mums Latvijā ir mazliet citāds ieskats, jo mēs ar viņu jau 5 gadus dzīvojam laulībā.
It seems to me that the West is presently experiencing a honeymoon with the Gorbachev, while we in Latvia have a slightly different view, because we have already spent 5 years in wedlock with him.
Starptautiskās tiesības ir Baltijas pusē. Mēs ticam, ka tās tiks respektētas un Baltija uzvarēs.
The international code of justice is on the side of the Balts. We believe that the Baltic states will be victorious.
Jūs, ASV pilsoņi, labi zināt, ka brīvības kareivis Soma ir tomēr vieglāks par gūstekņu važām.
You, the citizens of the United States, know that the backpack of the freedom fighter is much lighter than the chains of the slave. Therefore, we hope that you will be with us, not only in words, but deeds as well.
Tāpēc mēs ceram, ka jūs būsiet ar mums ne tikai vārdos, bet arī darbos un prasīsiet to no savas valdības. Paldies!
And that you will ask the same of your government. Thank you.
I'd like to call the Skandinieki group to the stage. They are a folklore group from Riga, Latvia, that is here in Chicago this week. They will sing the Latvian national anthem. the Estonian Congress and Estonian National Council of the United States.
On the behalf of Estonian Americans, I assure all of you and ask all of you to join me in telling Mr. Gorbachev and his wimpy friend in the White House that Latvia shall be free, Lithuania shall be free, Estonia shall be free. Communism is finally dead. These days, even communists aren't taking that absurd, failed system of enslavement seriously. Unfortunately, Gorbachev still wants to cling to the empire, an empire based on guns and bayonets, an empire based on shackles and oppression, an evil empire. But the time for colonies and empires is past. Time is on our side. The future belongs to us. We are very much dismayed that our president pays only lip service to the guiding principles of this great country: freedom, democracy, and the right of self-determination. We expect more of you, Mr. President. We are dismayed and angry that our president finds it necessary to favor the oppressor more than the oppressed. We and the world demand more of you, Mr. President. We find it very dismaying that our president finds it convenient to put all of his eggs in Gorbachev's basket. One who puts his eggs in a military dictatorship basket is likely to find himself with egg all over his face. Mr. President, how about growing yourself a backbone? I call on all of you to urge our congressmen, congressional representatives to apply strong economic and political sanctions against Soviet Union until freedom is again in Baltic countries. I ask all of you to join me in telling Mr. Gorbachev and his wimpy friend in the White House that Latvia shall be free. Lithuania shall be free. Estonia shall be free. Freedom! 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 Freedom!
Skandinieki will now sing and gentlemen, Lietuvas hymnas. The Honorable Vaclavas Kleza, Consul General of Lithuania. Today, we rejoice with our Latvian friends on the occasion of the restoration of independence of the Republic of Latvia, and we're pleased to extend our greetings and best wishes to the Latvian community in Chicago for prosperity, freedom, and peaceful life in the newly independent Latvian Republic. With this, the full cycle has been completed. All three Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, unequivocally declared to the world, Mr. Gorbachev, we insist that you remove your armies, your tanks, your secret police, your Communist Party, and your yoke of slavery from our lands. To charm the world with your smile, but you have failed to convince the enslaved people because your words have not been supported by your deeds. Mr. Bush, remember July 1988? It was an election year. You spoke at the Lithuanian Festival in Kelimunkport, Maine, where you called for rededication to the dream of freedom, returning once again to Lithuania. Direct quote, "The United States has always condemned the violation of your national sovereignty, and in the years ahead, we will never condone the forced occupation of Lithuania by the Soviet Union. To do so would be to turn our backs on our own values and our own heritage. As a nation born out of a struggle against tyranny, America should never apologize for helping others win their freedom, and I never will. End of the quotation. Mr. President, Mr. President, Mr. President, we are deeply disappointed and discouraged by your actions because you have turned your back on us and you betrayed our trust in you. Again, we ask you to act before it is too late. Baltic states were sold once in Yalta. We hope they were not sold for the second time in Malta. Our main weapons today are the moral right and the international law. Let's stand together so that the bells of freedom can ring again in Tallinn, Riga, and Vilnius. Long live the independent republics of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. I'd like to introduce you to Aurelia Puczynski.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Reverend Clergy, Mr. Consul General, ladies and gentlemen, freedom lovers everywhere. It is a privilege for me, a member of the Polish-American Congress, to join you today as we pay tribute to those brave Latvians, Lithuanians, and Estonians who, as we speak, are facing their greatest challenge in 50 years. They know, as we know, that freedom is precious and priceless, and that democracy is very hard work. And we know that our hearts are with them as they struggle to capture the freedom that is morally theirs by right. We are committed to freedom in the Baltic nations and indeed to freedom for all of the captive nations, because we know that none of us is free until all of them are free as well. And we are committed to freedom in all nations so that these lovely children and their cousins abroad will always know God's greatest gift, freedom for men and women of goodwill. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ores Baranyik, member of Ukrainian Congress Committee of America.
Friends of freedom. A few weeks ago, we met here to support Lithuania's bid for independence. Today, we meet to show our support for Latvia, as well as all the other captive nations striving for self-determination. By now, it has become quite apparent that Bush's meeting with Gorbachev in Malta last year was not only a Munich appeasement, as cited by President Landsbergis, but also a Yalta, for the price of letting go of the Soviet satellites, Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Western economic help. Bush agreed not to interfere in the internal affairs of the Soviet Union. Apparently, our president can take a strong stance when it comes to broccoli, but he whips out when it comes to the freedom of nations. Today, we meet here to condemn Gorbachev's strangulation of Lithuania. We meet here to condemn Gorbachev's intimidations of Latvia, despite which Latvia has today declared its independence. We meet here to demand that President Bush and the rest of the Western leaders show some moral fortitude against the forces of enslavement. At the same time, we exhort President Bush to stop reading the polls and stand up for democracy. Stop thinking that Gorbachev's survival is the only priority. Stop helping preserve the last colonial empire of the 20th century. President Bush, you still have a chance for greatness. If you have the courage to uphold the principles on which this country was founded, speak out against Moscow's imperialism. If you don't, history won't even remember you as a whip. On behalf of the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, I assure you our solidarity in our common cause, even though you don't mention Ukraine as often as you should. Remember that unless we are all free, none of us is free. Even though at this moment we stand without any support from the Western leaders, our cause is just and it will prevail. Yesterday, Lithuania. Today, Latvia. Tomorrow, Ukraine, Belarus, Georgia, Estonia, and all the other nations under Moscow. Very soon, we will all be free. Thank you.
Mr. Kestutis Porcius from the Baltic Freedom Group, South Bend, Indiana.
Hello? Labas? Thanks? Tada. We come to you from South Bend, Indiana, where our organization is, like the Baltic nations, very small. But like the Baltic nations, we are very strong and we are vociferous. Most of all, we are united. And like the Baltic nations, we will survive and we will prevail. President Bush sees the Soviet Union through rose-colored glasses. I submit to Mr. Bush that true color is as red as the Soviet flag. And his actions over the last few months say to me that when the head barks in Moscow, the tail seems to wag in Washington. I'd like to leave you with a few words that Lithuanian President Vytautas Landsbergis spoke a few weeks back to a rally in Vilnius, and he was quoting the Lithuanian Archduke Gediminas when he said, "Iron will melt to wax, and water will turn to stone before we retreat." Thank you.
Mr. Casey Oxis, President of the Captive Nations Organization.
Thank you, Juris. On behalf of the Captive Nations Council of Illinois, greetings to all friends of liberty. The burning question of today is why so many in the United States Congress and in the executive branch are so anxious to preserve and protect the great Soviet Empire. Why? Historically, when an empire is composed of unwilling, subjugated people that has lasted too long, it starts to break up. Today, the Soviet Empire is starting to break up. Why should anyone want to keep it together? The United States government, various presidents and Congresses for 50 years have proclaimed that the annexations of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia were through force, not legal, and therefore not recognized. It logically follows that now, with democratically elected governments, such governments should be recognized de facto by the United States. Today we are at a critical junction of history. The new vision of European security cannot include a prison of nations inside the Soviet Empire. If the U.S. government supports the idea of self-determination, it must also support de facto recognition of democratically elected governments of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. In good conscience, in conformity with a 50-year-old Baltic policy, and in the spirit of justice, the United States government must now recognize de facto the democratic elected governments. We will never stop sending this message to Washington until it is understood there and acted upon. And with the help of God, freedom shall endure and prevail.
Dr. Miroslav Charkovitz from the Anti-Bolshevik Bloc of Nations.
Esteemed dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, dear Latvian and Baltic friends, I am very highly honored and very pleased to join the voices of this splendid rally in the support of the Latvian freedom and independence. On the behalf of the American Friends of the Anti-Bolshevik Bloc of Nations, ABN, let me convey our best wishes. We salute and express our deep admiration for the heroic stand of Latvian patriots, for your parliament, courageous president, and whole Latvian nation, as well as all heroic boats. Your heroes as heroes of other Baltic nations and why Ukraine and other captive nations did not sacrifice their precious lives in vain, only made one more giant step toward liberty, freedom, and true democracy for all nations and all individuals. We all believe strongly that freedom is really indivisible for all, and we know that Latvians' free spirit will not surrender, will not budge despite of all difficulties and complications. Here in the free world, we all captive nations, victims of Bolshevists, have to work harder, to close tighter our ranks and repeat again and again. Latvia must be free. Lithuania, Estonia, Ukraine, Belarus, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Moldavia, and all captive nations must be free. The common Russian imperialism is the only enemy of liberty and freedom, as well as peace in the world. It is for me a great honor to say once more, particularly today, long live free Latvia, long live free Baltic states, long live free Ukraine, and all former captive nations. Ilge vivo, viva Latvia!
The Latvian Kamerkoris. I received this message today. I am sorry I cannot be here with you today, but I'm pleased to send a message of support for your cause and hope for the future. Independence for the Baltic republics of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia will become a reality in the not-too-distant future because the tides of history are sweeping illegal governments away all over the world. As we witnessed in the revolutions in Eastern Europe in 1989, these changes come about quickly and without much warning. I am hopeful that Soviet leaders will acknowledge their own self-interest in freeing the Baltic nations very soon. In public and private settings, we ought to get this message across to President Gorbachev. End the blockade of Lithuania and start talking to the representatives of the Baltic peoples. This should be American policy until all three Baltic nations are free and independent. Senator Paul Simon, United States Senate. I'm sorry I cannot be here with you to celebrate the pending declaration of Latvian independence, but I share the joy you and all Americans feel at this announcement. All three of the Baltic republics have now declared their independence from the Soviet Union. They have chosen slightly different roads, but on one essential point they all agree, that their independence is non-negotiable, that their right to be free cannot and will not be held hostage to the dictates of Moscow and the Soviet Constitution. At this historic moment, we must not forsake our own role in this drama. It saddens me that when the hoped-for day arrived, when the Baltic republics, inspired by our democracy and our non-recognition policy, took the courageous and costly step of declaring independence, the United States government failed to live up to its commitment. The time for playing politics with principle is past. If President Bush cannot bring himself to recognize Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia, or to impose economic sanctions on the Soviet Union, I hope he will at least extend a helping hand to the Baltic nations. A good start would be humanitarian assistance to relieve the suffering of the Lithuanian people. We in the Congress will continue the fight for a stronger, more supportive U.S. policy toward the Baltics. We will need your help in that cause, and I look forward to working with you to see the cherished dream of Baltic independence come true. Richard J. Durbin, United States House of Representatives. We received one additional message, very short message. I'd be remiss if I didn't share it with you. As Governor of Illinois, it gives me great pleasure to extend greetings to everyone gathered today in support of the independence of the Baltic Republics. This rally, sponsored by the United Latvian Associations of Chicago, is in support of the reaffirmation of the independence of Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. Through recognition of this complex situation, positive action can commence. I share your hope for democracy in this troubled part of the world. My thoughts are with you today as we remember the plight of the Baltic Republics. Sincerely, James R. Thompson, Governor. Now for our last official song of this program. Few words now from Ilga Berskauns, President of the American Latvian Youth Association.
Let's have a big hand for Baltic independence. The last few months have seen the goals and dreams of many of us and our parents and our children come true. The proclamation of independence in the Baltic countries. However, this is just the beginning. Now comes the hard part. The peoples in the Latvian, Lithuanian, and Estonian republics have already been working towards independence and will continue to work hard, continue to work with the Soviet Union. So we too must work here in America to influence the eyes of the world. I urge all of you to go home tonight. And yes, if you wish, celebrate. But let's also remember to write to our president, to our senators, to our House of Representatives congressmen, to our local elected officials, to our local press, And to all of our relatives and friends, I urge all of you, go home tonight, call 10 or 20 of your friends, urge them to do the same. This is the time that we must work our hardest, for the eyes of the world are now upon the Baltic republics. And I know that you are the people to do it, because you are still standing here in the cold. Let's all work together.